Tom Cameron crazy.
Ed Huntley. David Brady. John Chen. Tom Brokaw.
The Schiavo case. More legal setbacks for Terri Schiavo's parents. Now, 1 week since her feeding tube was removed, her father says she's in her final hours. The Pope's health. John Paul II forced by bad health to watch as the faithful celebrate Good Friday. What the Vatican is saying about his condition tonight. Identity crisis. Think your personal information is secret? Criminal hackers could be accessing your personal files. What you need to know to fight back. And our special series, Faith in America. Tonight, from beach parties to theme parks, vacations meant to be fun and faith-based.
This is NBC Nightly News with Brian Williams. Substituting tonight, John Siegenthaler.
Good evening, everyone. Lawyers for Terri Schiavo's parents headed back to a Florida court tonight in one more desperate attempt to keep their daughter alive. Even though they've been unable to persuade the court so far, the parents refuse to give up. While protesters keep vigil outside, the parents now say that a week without the feeding tube means Terri Schiavo is in her final hours of life. We begin with NBC's Mark Potter in Pinellas Park, Florida. Good evening, Mark.
John, that hearing is over now, and the judge says he'll... As for the appeals court, no word yet on when or how the judges will rule. John?
NBC's Mark Potter. Mark, thank you. As we heard, Terri Schiavo's feeding tube is one of the issues at the center of this legal, medical, and moral debate. This is the third and longest time it's been disconnected. Is Schiavo suffering without it? Here's NBC's chief science correspondent, Robert Bazell, with a reality check. In Jerusalem, hundreds of worshipers gathered to mark the most somber day in the Christian calendar. Carrying crosses, they walked through the old city, retracing the last steps Jesus took before his crucifixion. For pilgrims in Rome, this Good Friday was the first time Pope John Paul II was a spectator and not the chief participant. Here's NBC's Keith Miller.
The mood outside the Vatican was of disappointment and concern. Tens of thousands of pilgrims gathered to mark one of the holiest days in the Catholic Church. For the first time in his 26-year papacy, Rome.
A new report on the UN's controversial handling of the Oil for Food program is due out next week. The investigation, led by former Federal Reserve Chairman Paul Volcker, looked at the role of the UN Secretary General, Kofi Annan, who reportedly comes in for some criticism. NBC's Ron Allen has that story tonight.
For the first time, the panel
have taken a heavy toll in Ramadi and an area just south of Baghdad. 15 Iraqi soldiers and police commandos were killed and 23 people were wounded, including 2 Americans. In another violent assault, 5 Iraqi women were found shot to death in a car in Baghdad. 4 of them worked at a U.S. military base. Iraqis who work for the U.S. are often the target of insurgents. America's intelligence community is preparing tonight for a harsh assessment from the Presidential Commission set up to figure out why the U.S. was so wrong about Iraq's weapons of mass destruction. The report is due out Thursday, but NBC's chief foreign affairs correspondent Andrea Mitchell has details tonight from Washington. Good evening, Andrea.
Good evening, John. Well, NBC News has learned that the CIA will be singled out for the harshest criticism for its pre-war judgments about Iraq's weapons of mass destruction. In fact, the criticism is so tough that today CIA Director Porter Goss sent an email to the agency's entire staff trying to boost morale in advance of next week's report. Sources say the commission will also blame the government's 14 other intelligence agencies for pre-war mistakes about Saddam's weapons. But in particular, the commission is expected to report that the CIA kept claiming aluminum tubes were proof that Saddam was building nuclear weapons, despite warnings that the tubes were meant for other purposes. The report will also blame the CIA for saying that Iraq had stockpiles of illegal weapons and allowed itself to be fooled by a bad source about mobile biological germ warfare vans. John?
NBC's Andrea Mitchell in Washington. Andrea, thank you. Up next, NBC News In Depth tonight. A rare look at an isolated, beautiful, but poor place. The Indian reservation where one young man apparently lost all hope this week. And later, in our special series, Faith in America, spring break like you've never seen it before. NBC News In Depth tonight, a rare look inside the Red Lake Indian Reservation, where a troubled 16-year-old boy killed 10 people, including himself, earlier this week. Today, President Bush expressed his condolences to the leader of the reservation, and tomorrow the community begins to bury the dead. Red Lake is a beautiful place, but as NBC's Kevin Tibbles learned, despair can be a daily struggle for the children there.
Poverty and
Up next, a new approach to fight back against a crime epidemic, identity theft. On this broadcast, we told you that at least 7 people, most of them children, and most of them in Florida, had become seriously ill with kidney problems after visiting a petting zoo. Now the number of cases is up to 15. Health authorities are focusing on a strain of dangerous bacteria as the possible cause. What if somebody hacked into your personal information and stole your identity, but nobody told you? Roughly 9.5 million Americans were victims of identity theft in just the past year alone. But in many cases, there was no warning until it was too late, and victims realized that someone was stealing and spending money in their name. Now there's a move to change that. Here's NBC's Tom Costello.
And I'm having trouble getting my credit score.
In San Francisco, 67 personal information, identities, have been stolen from Choice Point.
Very intimate information, actually more information about me than my own children have.
A massive leak from a company whose specialty is collecting and saving 19 billion records.
This is an industry that holds a tremendous amount of information, a very rich dossier on just about every American adult.
But without much government oversight. California is the only state requiring companies to warn customers if their personal information has been compromised. In recent months, it's happened at Boston College, Chico State University, UNLV, LexisNexis, and Bank of America.
It's incredibly difficult to hold on to your own information. In fact, you can't.
Untangling an identity theft. Members of Congress talking about tougher regulations to safeguard identities. Federal regulators this week began pressuring banks to more promptly disclose any security breach when identity theft or misuse of information is reasonably possible.
Absolute security is a very tough standard to meet. We're awfully close to it, but it's one of those goals that you always come closer to but never quite reach.
Experts say if you suspect someone has stolen your data, close all of your credit card accounts, place a fraud alert on your credit reports, and ask government agencies to flag your file. Back in San Francisco,
It gets me aggravated. It gets me frustrated.
Warren Lambert fears his golden years will be spent waiting for his stolen identity to be used against him. Tom Costello.
And one other business note, the stock market was closed today in observance of Good Friday. When we come back, in our special series tonight, vacations that are about faith as much as fun.
NBC Nightly News with Brian Williams, brought to you in part by Aflac. Ask about it at work.
And finally tonight, our special series, Faith in America. In a new NBC News poll, 57% of Americans said they believe the biblical account of creation. 44% believing God created the world in 6 days. 33% believe evolution is the more likely explanation for the origin of human life on Earth. Now, to satisfy the interest of those who want to see their religious beliefs reflected in their leisure time pursuits, faith-based vacation destinations and tours are springing up nationwide. Here's NBC's Roger O'Neill.
It's the full news, Pensacola, Florida.
Our special series on Faith in America continues tomorrow on Nightly News with a look at faith and comedy. That's Nightly News for this Friday. Thanks for watching. Don't forget Dateline tonight at 8, 7 Central. I'm John Siegenthaler reporting from New York. I'll see you back here tomorrow night.
Sunday, a special edition, Faith in America. As many Americans celebrate Easter, a look at the role religion plays in politics. If it's Sunday, it's Meet the Press.
Next on Extra.
Good morning. Papal blessing. Pope John Paul II appears at his window and blesses the faithful.